Inflation is simply rising prices. Not just increases in prices for one or two things, but prices generally rising right across the economy. It's been said that apart from famine and war, inflation was the biggest challenge a country ever faced. It's brought down governments and impoverished whole nations. History can tell us how this happened. Have you heard about what happened in the 1970s? World oil prices more than tripled, the government borrowed heavily, prices started to rise and workers demanded higher wages.
Inflation ran at 8%. To accept a 5% rise, it's silly. You know, you've got the rent going up, it'll probably be milk up for me kids, you just can't carry on.
Well, 5% no good to nobody, is it?
Higher pay meant higher costs and pushed up prices even more. By 1975, prices were rising by 25% a year, and inflation averaged no less than 13% a year over the 1970s as a whole. Inflation didn't slow down until 1983. By that time, a weekly shopping bill costing just £25 in 1970 had leapt to almost £115. And it's been the same story at other times. As prices rise, the value of our money falls. We have to go right back to the wars with France that began in 1793 to find the highest inflation ever recorded in Britain. In 1800, prices jumped by 36%. That was more than 200 years ago, but the causes of inflation then were no different to the causes today. During the Napoleonic Wars, so much money was spent on arms, the economy just couldn't keep up, causing widespread shortages and higher prices for many products. It's the same in war or peace. If governments and consumers try to buy more than businesses can produce, prices will start to rise. After the war with France, Britain went on the gold standard in 1816. This meant the value of paper money was linked to gold. In fact, Bank of England notes became receipts for deposits of gold in its vaults. This led to decades of stable prices because it was clear what money was worth. And the supply of money could not increase without new gold entering the Bank of England vaults. However, this all had to be abandoned in 1914 when Britain went back to war. The country ran up huge debts. Prices more than doubled because of the First World War. 2 decades later, much the same happened when Britain scrambled to rearm in 1939. By 1945, prices had risen by around 50% since 1939. In 1946, Hungary experienced the worst inflation ever recorded, with prices at one time doubling every 15 hours. But prices don't have to rise. They can fall just as easily and with equally damaging consequences. In the 1920s, Britain suffered badly during the Great Depression. As war spending ceased, the economy slumped, and prices fell in almost every year between 1921 and 1933. But in Germany, the interwar years saw a famous episode of hyperinflation. The government couldn't pay its war debts, so it printed huge amounts of paper money. Prices soared. Workers were paid up to 3 times a day. Many Germans burned their worthless marks to keep warm. At its worst, in 1923, prices doubled every 2 days. It's often said that the economic turmoil of the 1920s helped Adolf Hitler to become Chancellor. In the 1940s, Britain joined the Bretton Woods system, linking many currencies to the US dollar, which was in turn linked to the American gold reserves, the largest in the world at the time. This helped to keep inflation low in the 1950s and 1960s. But by the late 60s, the US was struggling to pay for the Vietnam War. It printed more and more dollars until the Bretton Woods system collapsed in 1971. Currencies were no longer fixed to the dollar. Inflation was about to return. Could history ever stop repeating itself? Could inflation in Britain ever stay low for good? Even in the 1980s, after a deep recession and with mass unemployment, prices rose on average by 7% a year. And by 1990, Britain was back in recession and still stuck with high inflation. In 1992, the government decided for the first time to set a clear target for inflation. Inflation began to fall. In May 1997, this was taken a step further when the Chancellor, Gordon Brown, gave the Bank of England its independence.
We will reform the Bank of England to ensure that decision-making on monetary policy is more effective, open, accountable and free from short-term political manipulation.
This allowed the bank's Monetary Policy Committee to set official interest rates every month to meet a target for low inflation. This has proved to be successful so far. Inflation has remained low and stable at about 2.5% a year between 1997 and 2005. History tells us that we're better off with low inflation. Low inflation brings a stable economy and money keeps its value. So if we could look into the future, is the battle to keep low inflation over in Britain? The answer is clearly no. Recent experience in other countries shows high inflation can return all too easily. So the Monetary Policy Committee will continue to respond each month to new challenges as it sets interest rates to keep inflation low.